if that decision is taken today itself, to get more updates about that. Well, more news. The Union Cabinet today approved a 50% reduction in the reserve price of CDMA spectrum that will be put up for auction in March. The empowered group of ministers, headed by Finance Minister P. Chidambaram, had on 7th January recommended a 30 to 50% discount on the base price of CDMA spectrum after the first auction of 2G airwaves on 12th November and 14th November, which did not see any participants for this type of spectrum. Well, the only two parties that had expressed interest for the CDMA spectrum, that is Videocon and Tata Teleservices, had pulled out, resulting in no auction ultimately. Well, only GSM airwaves while finally bid for. Well, our correspondent Sidhant Sibal joins us from the newsroom to understand this technical matter. Sidhant, reduction in the reserve price of CDMA, what does this all mean, and how does it really affect a common man?
Well, CDMA is the 800 megahertz band of the spectrum. There is also another band called GSM. It is the 1800 megahertz and the 900 megahertz. Basically, what does a 50% reduction in reserve price means? Reserve price is the minimum amount you have to shell out the money to buy 5 megahertz of the spectrum in the CDMA band, that is the 800 megahertz. Now, the reserve price in the last auction, that was the auction which was held in November 2012, which lasted only for 2 days, got no response from the investors, since the reserve price of CDMA was way much higher. It was 11 times the reserve price that was decided in 2008 and 1.3 times higher that of the GSM reserve price. So absolutely there were no investors. There were only two investors who had this intent that we'll participate, but just 2 days before the auction had to start, they withdrew. Those are Videocon and Tata Teleservices. Now government has started the round 2 of the auction, which will start on March the 11th for GSM and also for the CDMA. For GSM, the government has already decided to reduce the reserve price by 30%. It happened. It was decided in the EGOM that took place on 7th of January this year. For CDMA, the decision was went to the cabinet, and today it was decided that we'll reduce the price, the reserve price, by 50%. This will obviously attract more bidders since the reserve price has decreased. And a government is expecting to garner around 20,000 crore rupees from the auction of the GSM and the CDMA spectrum. How does it affects you and me? Well, since more investors will come for the auction process, government will get more revenue, and this will eventually reduce the fiscal deficit, which the government expects at 5.3%. The Kelkar report expects at 6.1%. Yes, the government is eyeing on two processes by which revenue can be garnered. One is the disinvestment and one is the auction process.
Well,